Well, as millions head to U.S. national parks this summer, we are shedding light on a little-known list called the List of the Missing. The National Park Service has faithfully kept records of visitors who are gone, often without a trace.
From just wanting to explore the wonders that nature has to offer to being the subject of rumors and controversy, long after his unfortunate disappearance while in search of an ancient archaeological site. Here's how this hiker's harrowing final moments were captured in photos that could lead to the discovery of Bigfoot. Just imagine the sinister scenario. You are one of the many hikers that call America home and decided to climb up one of the mountain ranges found in the local area because you are an avid lover of nature. What's even better about your love for nature is that you're not naive either. You are aware of the many dangers that can be found in these woods. After all, many have come out of the same forest with stories about domineering bears foraging for food, or the menacing pack of wolves they just happened to run into when they were taking a stroll within one of the beautiful exhibits of Mother Nature. However, all of a sudden, you are confronted with one of the most unbelievable creatures you've ever heard of. In fact, you were convinced that this creature wasn't real, but here you are, standing in front of the legend that is Bigfoot. Many have come out of the woods with such stories, yet as we all know, not too many people are too keen to buy into the fantasy that Bigfoot is real.
The indigenous people of the area certainly knew about the Sasquatches that they lived among. When white settlers started coming into the area, they also ran across Sasquatches, and they reported them as wild men or wild women.
After all, the only concrete proof that we seem to have despite the persistent legend of this fabled creature are dodgy images and videos that nobody is in a hurry to believe. Then again, maybe the reason we haven't been able to prove that Bigfoot is real is because the legendary creature snuffs out anyone who may actually be able to come away with concrete evidence that Bigfoot exists. The disappearance of Dale Stehling. Just look at what happened to Mitchell Dale Stehling, a 51-year-old husband and father who decided that he was going to have a ton of fun exploring the Mesa Verde National Park on the 9th of June 2013. What he didn't know about this day was that this was perhaps the last time that anyone would lay their eyes on the unfortunate man for a very long time. In fact, the next time he would be seen, he would only be made up of a bunch of bones. Alas, as we searched for answers as to what happened to the now pile of bones that laid before the discoverers, these people will soon find that they may come across the answers that they were looking for by taking a closer look at the mobile phone device and other technological devices. What was even more shocking about this discovery was the huge footprints that were found around the bones in the electronic device. What could have happened to Dale Stehling when he was out there? Could the electronic devices found close to him truly be the witnesses of the last moments of this hiker's life? Who is Mitchell Dale Stehling? Well, this unfortunate incident occurred to Dale, a hardworking Texas native who just wanted to take care of his wife and his 5 children.
Called the skunk ape, and there's been a lot of sightings over many years of what they describe as a Bigfoot type of creature. What they call that is the skunk ape, partly because it smells skunky, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing as a Bigfoot.
He also seemed to be a tenacious butcher who worked 7 jobs in the meat business. Ever the hard worker, his never-ending endeavor would pay off when he was made the marketing manager in one of his places of work. This seemed to be well-earned as well, because even his family and friends would tell you that they were rooting for him. Maybe it was due to his hard work, but maybe it was also due to the fact that he had a mild personality. Add that to his noticeable height, his even more noticeable beard, and his bright eyes, and you'd find that he was truly one very likable character. Well, maybe that is why we all rooted for him when he eventually went missing on that fateful day on the 9th of June 2013. All he wanted to do was go to some of the most scenic spots in the country with his family. They had already taken in the sights to behold when they visited the Thousand Mile Canyon National Monument in Arizona. Unfortunately, the group would experience their first hitch when they eventually made it to New Mexico. Just as they crossed the state lines, the group would find themselves stranded as they realized their trailer had just broken down without any warning. Forced to come to a stop so that they could implement their repairs, the team did feel some relief when they realized that they had just come to a stop close to Mesa Verde Park. This is because they figured that as their trailer was being repaired, they might as well explore this park for all it's worth. With such thoughts in mind, the team decided to make a beeline to the ruins of Spruce Tree House.
The ancestral remains have been in the National Museum of Finland for decades. It was a researcher who took more than 20 individuals and dozens of artifacts back in 1891 from what is now Mesa Verde National Park.
This is just one of the many fascinating sites that can be found in the Mesa Verde Park, as it is the home to the most impressive collection of Pueblo ancestral site in the U.S. This means that such a place is home to more than 600 cliff dwellings found in the more than 5,248 acres of land found in the Mesa Verde Park. With that in mind, we must mention that this place is one of the most significant archaeological sites in the whole country. This is probably due to the fact that the Pueblo tribesmen, people who live in this area, are an indigenous tribe that are known for their self-built mud brick homes. These mud brick homes are astounding because of their historical significance, seeing as they are more than 1,300 years old. What's even more amazing about this ancient historical site is the fact that the locals seem to believe in the legend of the strange creatures that are said to exist in the forest in the area. These creatures are mystical in nature, as they are believed to be shapeshifters who can become any animal or human they want to be. They are said to be so powerful in their abilities that the only way to see the true face of such a creature is to take it down with a bow and arrow. Well, if anyone is going to take such creatures down, they would have to do it as quickly as possible, because they have the ability to become invisible within seconds, while also being able to move rapidly to another location. Truly fascinating stuff. The locals were also of the belief that this creature was large and hairy, much like the Sasquatch of lore. What may be even more fascinating about such a creature is that the locals believed that it had the ability to be an interdimensional creature. Apparently, they held on to this belief so strongly that they figured that these creatures were the medium through which humans were able to make contact with nature.
There didn't appear to be the normal accoutrements that you usually see on someone who's hiking in the backcountry. Their torsos are very barrel-shaped. These are creatures that are evolved to muscle their way through the environment rather than think their way through.
As fascinating as this creature may be, there were other tribes who considered this creature to be more evil than fascinating. This is because they had stories of how these creatures not only took down lone hunters hunting for food in the wild, but they also abducted poor little children from their homes. With that in mind, you can imagine how such people were wary about taking a walk alone in the forest. All they needed to be on their toes was to hear the sound of that strange whistle that has long been associated with these creatures. Perhaps hoping to chronicle the accounts of these creatures, the locals were known to carve images on their walls, referred to as petroglyphs, which served as a form of cultural expression. With any luck, such illustrations will be able to shine more light on the mystery of the disappearances of people such as Dale Stehling. This takes us back to Dale and his family as they explored the wonders that could be found in the Mesa Verde Park. After exploring the park for a while, Dale just happened to notice this ancient site that just seemed to call to him. After telling his wife that he was going to explore the site alone, maybe they should have realized that Dale had gone off the main road. Instead, he seemed to have picked a remote path. Maybe it was because he was hoping to get to the site faster. Who wouldn't? Especially as the main road seemed to be this 4.2-mile circular trail. Not only was this trail long, it was also narrow and steep, meaning that it was way too easy for any hiker to tip off the edge if they were not careful enough. What would prove to be an even bigger error in judgment for Dale and those who went along with him to the park was before he veered off alone, he refused to take any water with him because he thought that he would be returning to his family soon. This was not supposed to be a long detour at all. Instead, it would be a diversion that would take him from everyone he knew and loved forever.
Doing the same sort of things as the people of the Pacific Northwest described, the most reasonable explanation for these different people describing the same animals is that they were describing the same animals. Sasquatches have a continent-wide distribution.
In fact, it would only be the strangers and tourists that he would come across as he made his way to the ancient site that would have any evidence of his path down the trail. Some of these tourists would take pictures of Dale before he was never seen again. Before long, Denian, Dale's wife, began to get worried. It had been quite some time since they had last heard from him, and as such, she and the rest of the family were starting to get frantic. She tried to call him, but unfortunately, she would never get a response. Feeling very uneasy about the entire situation, Denian attempted to call the Park Service, but the management staff did all they could to put her and the family at ease. Thanks to their experience, they believed that it would only be a matter of time before Dale turned up again. Give it an hour or so, and they would all be laughing about the time Dale got lost in the Mesa Verde Park. Alas, that hour or so would pass without Dale turning up. Now even more frantic, Denian and the rest of the family decided to call the police. Now aware that this is a situation that must be taken seriously, the police and the Civil Service Administration formed a search and rescue team so that they could go in search of the missing hiker. Unfortunately, despite the fact that more than 60 search and rescue personnel, a canine search and rescue team, as well as a helicopter and rope team spent 2 weeks searching for Dale, it never seemed as though they could pick up on Dale's trail. They had even gone into some parts of the park that had been cut off to the members of the public beforehand in a bid to find this missing man. The authorities would take solace in the fact that Dale would prove to be the 1 out of 10 people that disappear in the park every year.
They either had some kind of an experience or somebody in their family had an experience that they, believe and have faith in. Those are the believers. Then you have the knowers. You have people like me and like the guys that I go with when we do this. We know Bigfoot exists. There's no doubt in our mind.
That said, the authorities could not deny that this was still a rather unusual case, and as such, it still haunts them till this day. The discovery of Dale Stehling. Alas, it appears as though Dale Stehling would remain missing until the 17th of September 2020. That is when an unidentified tourist just happened to come across a white bone while he was making his way through the Montezuma Valley. It didn't take the authorities too long to come across the rest of what they would determine to be the unfortunate Dale Stehling, who had been missing for about 7 years up until that point. That was not the only thing that was discovered because, if you guys remember, his mobile phone was discovered with the rest of his remains. Apparently, after checking his phone records, the authorities discovered that he had tried to make a call around 7 p.m. that day, but it had unfortunately failed. He also tried to leave a voicemail with the person he was trying to get in contact with, but alas, that failed as well. Perhaps it was due to the fact that at the point in time when he tried to make these phone calls, he had already gotten to the parts of the park that lacked any cell phone signal. At least that is what they figured out when they looked at the photos he had taken at that time. Funny enough, these photos also were quite revealing about the last moments of his life. They showed how he made his way through the swamp before making it to one of the streams. Alas, the pictures would keep on coming up until it was dark. That is when they noticed a photo of this dark figure that seemed to be lurking in the dark nearby. What on earth could that be? It looked to be this furry humanoid creature that was standing in the shadows of the trees. Truly upsetting stuff, but somehow, these photos were followed by 2 short clips. While we may not know too much about this area at this point in time, we can say that this was probably the time that Dave realized that he was truly lost. This must have been one of the scariest moments of his life. Encounter with Bigfoot? After some more investigation into Dale Stehling's mobile devices, the authorities also came across this recording of some rather strange and eerie sound. This eerie sound came in the form of this whistle that rang through the entire forest. Apparently, this was the second short clip we spoke about earlier. In an even eerier moment than the whistling, the short clip showed us how in the last moments of his life, Dale Stehling just happened to make a recording of this dark humanoid creature. As if that was not scary enough, this dark humanoid creature started throwing rocks at Dale. Imagine how shocking that must have been. Luckily, the stone didn't hit Dale as he recorded, but it was still a scary moment for the man. Despite this video evidence, the authorities didn't think that Dale was murdered. This is mainly due to the fact that the place where Dale's remains were discovered had been sectioned away from the members of the public. Even the man who'd eventually discovered the remains of our poor victim would do so illegally because he was not supposed to be there in the first place. Another reason the authorities didn't believe that there was any foul play in Dale's disappearance is because much of his belongings were found with him. Due to these factors, the authorities came up with several theories in a bid to find an explanation for the reason behind Dale's demise. One of the more popular theories is that as Dale was trying to get himself to safety, perhaps in a bid to create as much distance as possible from the dark humanoid creature that seemed to be following him around. He was unfortunate enough to fall off the edge of one of the cliffs found in the area.
Try to identify, first eliminate a hair as a possible Sasquatch hair by attributing it to something known, like a human, or a chimpanzee, or a brown bear.
Others said that he must have succumbed to the elements as he made his way to the ancient archaeological site that he had spotted when he was still with his family. This is quite likely because although he was still a healthy man, he was not as fit and nimble as he was when he was young. You see, he had undergone some surgeries on his back in the past, and as such, he would really be at a disadvantage if he got lost in the diverse biosphere of the Mesa Verde Park. Alas, as we all know, Dale would eventually succumb to the elements. Till this day, the authorities are still hoping to find out what actually brought Dale's life to an end. Sure, he was at a physical disadvantage, but to some of the experts, it was very likely that aside from falling off a cliff, there was every chance that Dale must have died of starvation while he was wandering through the park. There was also every chance that he was descended upon by one of the many dangerous creatures that call such a place home. Try as they may, though, there aren't many who think that they can solve this case. That said, some are still trying to get to the bottom of the mystery. For example, Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the well-respected zoologist and biologist, came up with a rather interesting theory. She turned our attention to the whistling that was heard in the recording earlier on. Looking for answers, we tried to think about how many creatures in such a place were actually capable of whistling. It was brought to our attention that out of all the primates in existence today, it seems as though it is only humans and chimpanzees that have the ability to whistle. In fact, with the latter species, there seems to be only one of these chimpanzees that has shown the ability to whistle just like a human. With that in mind, it is also brought to our attention that some people have claimed that another well-known creature has the ability to whistle. In fact, it is believed that this creature does so in a bid to warn or threaten outsiders who may be encroaching onto its territory.
I find Chuck's reaction to be very natural, unstaged. When he turns and looks at the camera and points, "Did you see that?" And then he immediately looks back and watches the animal as it walks away. I find that many times hoaxers focus on the camera itself instead of at this amazing thing.
The only problem with associating this creature with this whistle is that many of us believe that this creature doesn't even exist. Then again, there are many who would have claimed that the whistling was done by none other than the legendary Bigfoot. After all, many have claimed that they had encountered the creature and it had whistled in a bid to let its presence be known. Looking at it now, this just adds more credence to many of the other Bigfoot sightings that have occurred over time. Just look at the time that a train on the tracks in Colorado just happened to come across this brown Bigfoot as it was making its way through the wilderness. When it noticed it was being watched, it actually looked as if it had disappeared from plain sight. This reminds us of the supposed ability of such creatures to disappear within moments, just like we mentioned earlier. Sure, some myths can be exaggerated sometimes, but this does add some credence to the legend of Bigfoot. After all, this may be how the legendary creature may have been able to evade detection despite the fact that its legend has persisted for centuries now. Maybe they are able to do this with their supposed ability to travel through space and dimensions, just like the native tribes thought they could back in the day. There is some evidence to support such claims today, with a YouTuber claiming that Bigfoot's body is magnetized after having the privilege to dissect a Bigfoot's body. This is truly amazing if proven to be true, but at the end of the day, all this does is add to the legend of this fascinating creature. Large, hairy, and forever elusive, we only have anecdotal accounts of the existence of this creature. Maybe, just maybe, if people like Dale were able to come out of the park after surviving their encounter with whatever caused him to meet his demise, maybe we could actually bring this never-ending mystery to an end. Until then, though, we will just have to keep on searching and hoping that people survive their encounter with this legendary creature. Maybe then, we could establish that Bigfoot is real. From just wanting to explore the wonders that nature has to offer to being the subject of rumors and controversy long after his unfortunate disappearance while in search of an ancient archaeological site, here's how this hiker's harrowing final moments were captured in photos that could lead to the discovery of Bigfoot.